Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this session of dtalks or Disruptive Talks on Literacy and Education. I'm your host, Mashood. We bring to you the success stories, the learnings, and the experiences of uh, education systems, not just in India but around the world. Because when we talk about making sure that education and the various empowerments which come because of education be made available for each and every child in everywhere in the world, it is important to learn what have different countries done in the area of school education, how do they empower children, and how they develop the skills of critical thinking, of being independent, of really using their knowledge to reach their maximum potential. And today we have with us a very special guest, one country which has actually really had very good education, has been able to provide very good education to its children, and has a very high literacy rate as well, is Bulgaria. And today we are honored to be joined by the ambassador of Bulgaria to India. She is also someone who is a very passionate civil servant as well. And she has also been working in the area of international development, and has also a very strong passion for the cause of women empowerment and women education as well. So, with this, we would like to welcome Miss Eleonora Dimitrova, the Honorable Ambassador of Bulgaria to India. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us today here at the D Talks, and we look forward to knowing more about what your thoughts are on the area of education and culture of Bulgaria, and how the experience of school education and literacy has been in your country, and what lessons we can learn from the experience of Bulgaria as well in education. So, ma'am, it's over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Bhatt. Good afternoon to all dignitaries, educationists, academicians, practitioners, students, and all of you who are with us this afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in the D-Talk series. As we discussed before we started the live session shortly with you, Mr. Bhatt, I'm only an ambassador. With this, I want to say that I'm not a narrow specialist in education, but I gladly accepted to be part of this series, because I truly believe that the topic of promoting education is absolutely critical, and this today more than ever. The COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating for people and economies, but it posed an even bigger challenge to the education worldwide. Education has gone virtual to virtual mode at increased pace. Exchange programs have been postponed. Specializations and internships has been adjusted. This has put more pressure than ever to young people and to the teachers alike. Talking about literacy, let me give you my simple answer to the fundamental question why literacy is important. In my personal view, it is important because it is not only a tool to enable one to pursue a further education or a better career, but it is a core life skill. And by saying this, I will explain what I mean. We all our lives, we literates, we kind of take our reading skills for granted. Just to give you a few examples, can you, for instance, imagine not being able to read the ingredients or the expiration date on the labeled on the foods on the packages of the food when you are shopping groceries, for example. Or can you imagine not being able to read the weather forecast just to know what to wear during the day, or not to read your horoscope or the latest news about your favorite cricket star or Bollywood star? Or to give you a more serious example, in democracies in which we live, both Bulgaria and India, where people elect their governments and their leaders, one can be really part of the process only if he or she is able to read and educate him or herself about the parties and the candidates that he or she is about to vote for. The above examples barely touch the surface of the empowerment of literacy for our everyday life. Nowadays, literacy is something more. It goes beyond the classical meaning of the word. Today we have literacy such as computer literacy, medical literacy, political literacy, sexual literacy, if you want just to name a few. All these terms just translated into one. It means being able to comprehend a certain amount of information. Therefore, I believe you would agree that literacy is an enabler, it's a game changer. Being literate, a person opens the door to accessing all spheres of knowledge gathered until now by the mankind over the years, ultimately improving the quality of life of the particular individual and the whole society. Therefore, both countries and societies which have strived towards knowledge have always encouraged and promoted education throughout the ages. And my country, Bulgaria, is no exemption. Many of our participants today probably know that Bulgaria is among the oldest states in Europe. It was established in 681. The first Bulgarian state practically created a new model of formation of national countries in Eastern Europe. Until then, the multinational Byzantine Empire has considered itself as a unique actor. Not only has Bulgaria disrupted the political monopoly of the Byzantine Empire, it has disrupted also the monopoly of the Latin, Greek, and Jewish languages as the only holy languages of Christianity considered till then. After the approval of the Bulgarian language to be among them by both the Pope and the Patriarch of Constantinople. Meanwhile, in Western Europe, the Bible has already become accessible to the general population with the translations by Martin Luther into German in 1534 and King James in English in 1611. In its 13th century's old history, Bulgaria has withheld the test of time, but also had periods of rise and decline. In the period 9th, 10th century, for example, the Bulgarian culture was flourishing to reach its culmination during the so-called golden century of Bulgarian culture. This is the time when the Saint Brothers Cyril and Methodius devised the Glagolitic alphabet. This is the predecessor of the Cyrillic alphabet, the first alphabet to be used to write the Slavonic manuscripts. and to write the Slavic languages in. I cannot stress enough the importance of Saints Kirill and Methodius in the culture, not only of Bulgaria, but for all our Slavic people. At this point, Bulgaria turned to be the cradle of the Cyrillic alphabet and the Slavonic culture. From here, from Bulgaria, the Christianity, the Cyrillic alphabet, and the Slavonic culture have proliferated to other territories in that time, Byzantine, Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Transylvania, and some parts of modern Russia, Ukraine, Belarus. This period of the so-called golden century of Bulgarian culture was followed by a period of Byzantine rule again, after which we gained our independence again. And then another race in our culture was the second Bulgarian state. It was called the second golden age of the Bulgarian culture. It was like the first renaissance for our culture. Unfortunately, these two golden periods in our history for our culture were followed by a very long, 5 centuries long and dark period of the Ottoman rule in Bulgaria. Sorry, which started in the 14th century and lasted till 1878. In the beginning of the 19th century, when Bulgaria was still under the Ottoman rule, actually the only schools available have been the so-called cell schools or church schools, which have been preserved from the times before the fall of Bulgaria under the Ottoman yoke. Instead of textbooks, the children were taught using the religious texts and books. During the Renaissance age in Europe and in the wake of the Bulgarian Renaissance in the 19th century, the need of advanced education was felt more and more increasingly, and the church, this church school, the cell schools proved already to be insufficient. The increase of the economic relations and trade already required in-depth knowledge of arithmetic, geography, and foreign languages, while the patriotic uprising had increased the demand for better knowledge of Bulgarian history. To that point in time, the advanced education was more of a privilege for those people whose families sorry, give me a second to take a glass of water, sorry. Sorry. So at that time, the education was only a privilege to those who can afford it. Their children were studying usually in abroad in the so-called Greek schools. At that time, a number of events happened that dramatically changed the education environment and landscape in Bulgaria. This was the first half of the 19th century. One of them was the publishing in 1824 of a guide on Bulgarian grammar, arithmetic, natural sciences, and history by the Bulgarian scholar Peter Beron. Peter Beron not only published this book, but also donated books and funds for the establishment of new schools, including of girls' schools in Bulgaria. This has given a strong impetus to the development of the modern Bulgarian educational system. Another event that happened and was a turning point for the Bulgarian education system was the introduction of the method of the so-called mutual education. Some of you might heard of it as the monitorial method, or the mutual instruction method, or the Bell-Lancaster method. It was introduced in Bulgaria in 1830s, and it proved to be another turning point and a game changer in the Bulgarian education, as it has been both modern for its time, while being unaffordable in a situation of limited funding and lack of educated and qualified teachers. The method has been so successful that this system of elder and more advanced students educating younger fellow students in Bulgarian language has quickly become a standard for Bulgaria. The schools had a strict organization of the entire educational process. The median education period has been about 2 years, and students have studied subjects such as grammar, ethics, hygiene, natural sciences, geography, history, mathematics, and religion. Special textbooks have been developed in contemporary Bulgarian language to cater the needs of the students. It is essential to mention that the funding for these schools, for example, for building, for constructing the buildings, or for the salaries of the teachers, were mainly by donations of the local population. The first such mutual school was opened doors in 1835 in the city of Gabrovo. The Bulgarian monk Neofit Rilski was the first teacher to develop a textbook on Bulgarian grammar and tables for other subjects, along with the general guidelines for the functioning of these mutual schools. For a very short period, only from 1835 to 1840, more than 15 such mutual schools were established throughout Bulgaria. Among them, the first girls' school, mutual school for girls, was established already in 1840. The mutual schools have played a crucial role in accelerating the education proliferation in Bulgaria during our Renaissance. We can say it has laid the foundation of the education system of modern Bulgaria. Many of the prominent Bulgarian scholars, educators, professors, politicians have begun their education in mutual schools. Having laid the foundation soon after, the necessity of even improved education was felt in Bulgaria. And this was the time when the first so-called classroom schools was opened. They were established by a few Bulgarians who have studied abroad in universities abroad and returned to Bulgaria and established these classroom schools. The first classroom school has been established in a small Bulgarian city in 1846. Initially, it was having only 2 classes. Later, more classes were added to it. Within less than 10 years, classroom schools, this model of classroom schools has been established in most of the major Bulgarian cities. After the liberation of Bulgaria from the Ottoman Empire in 1878, the Bulgarian school had to cater to the needs of the administration, economy, and politics. It had to raise the level of culture throughout the entire society, and it has to do it quickly. Bulgaria had to catch up quickly and reach the standards of the advanced European countries at that time, so that the people of Bulgaria could, the young people of Bulgaria could attend prominent European universities. Education policy has been at the core of the newly formed free Bulgarian state after the liberation from the Ottoman Empire. The public schools have been regulated by a statute coining down the principle of unified school administration, mandatory universal primary education. Throughout the years, the education system has raised to the level of that in the other European countries. Bulgaria has carefully observed and implemented the best practices from countries like Germany, France, Russia, Switzerland, and by the proclamation of the independence of Bulgaria in 1908, there has been already a wide school network. Continuity between the primary and secondary school has been achieved. Boys and girls schools have been set on equal footing. The fact that the schools have been under the aegis of the state has led to affordable education, which has allowed many young Bulgarians to achieve various educational grades. The public interest has been immense also because of the fact that educated people could enjoy higher social status and bigger potential to participate in the not only in the political life but in all spheres of life in the country. The goal of the primary school at that time has always been to introduce the national culture to the students, while that of the secondary school was to enrich their knowledge with information on the development of other nations and the overall advancement of the human civilization. Therefore, the primary school has stressed on mainly on Bulgarian language, Bulgarian history, geography, religion, and natural sciences. The accent in the secondary school has remained on Bulgarian language and literature, but also history and geography. However, world history, world geography, philosophy, science, and foreign languages have been added to the curriculum. This approach aims at introducing large volumes of scientific knowledge methodically among the young generations. It allowed for making parallels with the other countries and at the same time affirming the national identity of Bulgarian people. It was also essential that all school textbooks have been approved by the Ministry of Public Education, and this from the beginning of the 20th century. The textbooks were developed according to the school programs for the various levels and classes. All state schools followed the same approved textbooks. Throughout the 20th century, the education has remained among the main priorities of Bulgaria and Bulgaria's leadership. The Bulgarian education system reached another milestone in 1944 when public education was democratized and complete equality between men and women was introduced. Women could fully participate in the public, economic, and cultural life of the country. In 1947, the Grand National Assembly of Bulgaria adopted a new constitution which affirms the principle of mandatory and free education in state schools for everyone. The right to education was envisaged in further constitutional amendments later on. The already quite wide school network has been further expanded by adding diverse types of schools, including professional, semi-tertiary, and tertiary schools. As a result of all these efforts and this firm commitment of for a better life and a better future for our country, for our people, within a time span of approximately 150 years, my country, Bulgaria, which has had the minimal levels of literacy in the beginning of the 19th century, being still under the Ottoman yoke, has reached almost universal literacy in the second half of the 20th century. This was possible also because we Bulgarians, by nature, we have a very high respect for schools, for education, for teachers. It is in our DNA, regardless of our social status, to strive to ensure the best possible education for our children. Today's Bulgaria is proud to have an educational system which falls within the best continental European traditions. School education is mandatory from age of from 7 or 6, according to the assessment of the parents, to the age of 16, 17. It provides for education and upbringing of students according to their individual needs and in line with the requirements and expectations for a successful realization in the society, in all spheres. Schools in Bulgaria can be either state, municipal, private, or there are also some religious schools. According to the type of training, schools are non-specialized, specialized, or specialized. Bulgarian schools have been opened also in now after the changes in Bulgaria in 1989. You probably know that there were many Bulgarians who traveled and live and work abroad. So there were many schools that have been opened also in countries with large Bulgarian communities to keep the bond with the Bulgarian language, with the Bulgarian culture and traditions, with the children who live abroad. Throughout the years, this has helped hundreds of thousands of Bulgarians study and maintain their good Bulgarian language. Today, these schools adjust to the situation and they are shifting, many of them shifting towards a hybrid or online mode of studying, and this enables even more children to enroll. Bulgaria has excellent tertiary education with a wide spectrum of both public and private universities, which excel in many domains, such as medicine, mathematics, IT, engineering, chemistry and biology, linguistics, just to name a few. Many Bulgarian universities offer tuition programs in English language as well and deliver double degrees, Bulgarian and degree of partner universities. Bulgarian diplomas are recognized in the European Union with an increasing mobility and links between Bulgarian and other universities throughout the European Union and beyond. Students choosing to complete their graduate degree in Bulgaria are able to do internships and participate in exchange programs through a network of partner educational institutions in Europe and outside Europe. Allow me here to just open a small bracket and say that we, as an embassy of the Republic of Bulgaria in India, we stand always ready to answer questions as well as to provide further information on all the opportunities for studying in Bulgaria. If there are any questions, so we are there to help and to help young Indians who would like to study in Bulgaria, to help them reach out to the desired universities in Bulgaria. We believe that this enables and this facilitates and promotes the people-to-people contacts, which are our natural bridges that we built between India and Bulgaria. Let me finish stressing that in an ideal world, today, 6th of October 2021, existing of illiteracy cannot and should not be a topic anymore. In today's interconnected world of high technologies, our way of life is transformed in ways we could hardly imagine 20 years ago. Living in post-computer era where handheld devices and Internet of Things are accessible and available, technology affects every stage and sphere of our existence, including but not limited to communications, healthcare, transportation, electoral system, law enforcement, and of course education. And in my humble opinion, again, in an ideal world, today, 6th of October 2021, achieving much higher, even close to universal levels of literacy should not and cannot be a challenge anymore to none of the educational systems in the world. The educational systems, they should and must face already its much greater challenge of today, which is to channel the students in the right direction, filtering out the knowledge from the information overload easily accessible to everybody. Schools' missions today is to deliver credible and trustworthy information to the students, and this is more important than it has been ever before. So thank you so much for taking your time with me.
Thank you, Mrs. Ambassador, for this, truly wonderful presentation. And it was so amazing to learn from you about Bulgaria's historical journey of and the values which your country has always supported, of equality, of progressive nature, of involving everyone in the society in its education system, providing education to all, very progressive ideals which all other countries can learn from. And thank you so much for taking us through this journey. And here you talked about how like this expansion of education has really helped everyone in the Bulgarian society to have opportunities. And you mentioned one point about the scientific knowledge and the focus on the scientific knowledge in which Bulgaria provides in its education system. So, would you like to share a bit more about how the education system in Bulgaria focuses on scientific knowledge? And in fact, we know many scientists from Bulgaria have, are innovators, and lots of innovators and researchers coming out of Bulgaria. in science. So would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Yes, with pleasure. But to start with, Bulgarian students are widely known throughout the world, not only for their insatiable hunger for more knowledge, but also for their excellence. And this is something that we have in common with India, because your young people are also very much striving for better knowledge and for excellence. Bulgarian students are regular winners of, for example, of mathematics, mathematic Olympiads and competitions. And some of our brightest minds and brains have been immortalized by discoveries and breakthroughs that have improved the lives of each and every one of us. And I will give you a few names if we have some time, and you will see why. So, for example, Jonathan Asuf, who is an American of a Bulgarian origin, he invented the world's first computer, the electronic digital computer. Another Bulgarian, Arsen Yordanov, invented the first airbag for the cars, the first tape recorder, and the first answering machine are his invention. Another Bulgarian famous is Peter Petrov. He invented the first computerized pollution monitoring system, first digital watch. He invented also the wireless heart monitor. If there are some doctors among us, they will probably know about another famous Bulgarian. His name is Professor Ivan Mitev Ivanov. He discovered the sixth heart tone. It is called, even on his name, it is called the tone of Mitev. This is just to name the few of the Bulgarians who the world will remember for their achievements in the sphere of science.
And is science like a compulsory subject in the schools? Till what level?
Science is compulsory subject, but it includes many fields. So you can have general science, or then you will get the subjects like biology, chemistry, and many others. But it's compulsory, yes. It's part of the curriculum.
Right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Another question that we had was about the Bulgarian language, and Bulgaria has this distinction of having almost 100% literacy. So, would you like to share a bit more about how has Bulgaria managed to preserve its language over such a long time, and what is the policy for studying the other languages, the foreign languages as well, in the school education system?
I think I have explained quite extensively how Bulgaria managed to preserve the language throughout these long, dark years of, for example, of the Ottoman yoke in Bulgaria. Language was preserved always by the church, by the monks, with these very simple cellar schools. Later on, they evolved in these mutual education schools, which were a new stage and a milestone in the education system in Bulgaria. Anyway, Bulgaria was able, and probably because, as I told you, it has been always in our DNA. to preserve our language, to preserve our culture, and to strive for education and better chances in life through education. Um, Speaking about foreign languages, studying in Bulgaria, it has its very natural explanation, maybe because of its geographical location or because of its size. You probably know we are just 7 million of us. So we had to learn foreign languages in order to be able to communicate with the rest of the world. We could not expect that everyone will learn Bulgarian. From the late 19th into the 20th century, right after the liberation of Bulgaria from the Ottoman Empire, in Bulgarian was formed this strong tradition of learning foreign languages. This falls within the secondary education. So the first secondary school specialized in foreign languages was established in the city of Lovech 71 years ago. And since then, many more have been established all over Bulgaria, in all major cities of Bulgaria. There is at least one school specialized in learning foreign languages. Studying a foreign language has become a standard in all schools, whereas specialized language schools teach additional languages. Bulgarians have traditionally studied languages such as English, of course, German, French, Russian, Spanish. So these are the five most traditional spoken and taught languages in Bulgaria. Along with the secondary schools specializing in mathematics, those secondary schools who are specialized in foreign languages, I must say, are among the most preferred ones when it comes to for young people to choose where to study their secondary school education.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that, and it's really wonderful to see. At the very topmost level, there is a push to for multilingualism, or have learning new languages, because, like you rightly said, that language is the most important tool through which different nations can communicate. In fact, I was also curious to know if the Bulgarian language is it something which is being taught in India? Is there any kind of policy of having people from India maybe learn about Bulgarian language? How can they learn more about this? Your thoughts, please.
Yes, thank you for this question. Yes, indeed, Bulgarian language is taught in India. As a matter of fact, Bulgaria and India, we enjoy long and traditionally very strong educational ties. Bulgarian language and literature is taught in the Department of Slavonic and Finno-Hungarian Studies of the Delhi University. And it will be interesting for you to know that this year we will celebrate 50 years of teaching Bulgarian within this department at the Delhi University. Each year, Bulgaria provides 4 scholarships for Indian students and scholars for the so-called summer seminars, which are organized by the Sofia University and by the University of Veliko Tarnovo. And but interestingly, not only Bulgarian is taught in India, but also Hindi is taught in Bulgaria, and this with long traditions as well. And it is taught not only as a language course, but since 1983, There is a bachelor and master programs on Indian studies at the Sofia University. This is the oldest university in Bulgaria. It falls within the Center for Eastern Languages and Studies of the Faculty of Classical and Modern Philology of Sofia University. And this faculty has also a PhD program in Indian linguistics and Indian literature.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing this information. And I think many people here in our audience and who will watch this video would be very interested to explore further about the Bulgarian language, because it's such an old tradition language, and have managed to preserve it. It's truly very interesting, and thank you for sharing this. My last question, in conclusion, would be about the point of women empowerment, and this is something which you also mentioned in your opening statement, that there's a very strong tradition of women empowerment in the country of Bulgaria. What is your like vision of how has education helped transform, what is the role of education when we talk about women empowerment? And if we talk about the we know that the first girls mutual school has been established at the time of the expansion of schooling in Bulgaria. So would you like to share more as to what have been some of the lessons learned in Bulgaria with respect to education of women and how it has helped in women empowerment?
Education for or including women on an equal foot with the men in the educational system of Bulgarian has been crucial for the whole society, and I've spoken a lot about how it and when it happened in the history of Bulgaria. What we have today is that modern Bulgaria has been always a strong promoter of women empowerment ever since, let's say, the 20th century onwards. This is among our top priorities. Today, definitely women are on equal footing with men throughout all careers, from education through healthcare, even to military. The number of Bulgarian women steadily rises in sectors which are traditionally considered as dominated by men. For instance, Bulgaria ranks first in the European Union by a number of women in the IT sector. Bulgaria also holds first place in terms of number of girls and young women studying IT. So this is impressive, and I would very much welcome our female participants today, young women who would be interested to study in Bulgaria. They are most welcome to do so, and the embassy will be happy to facilitate their contacts to Bulgarian universities.
On that note, on that very positive note, thank you. We would like to thank Ambassador Miss Eleonora Dimitrova, who's really shared this wonderful vision of education in the country of Bulgaria, and you've shared about some some very interesting historical perspective as to how education expanded, how the education policy was always driven by the values of egalitarianism, equality, women empowerment, and preserving of culture, and at the same time also being open to learn about other cultures, learn about other languages as well. And I think this is a ideal which other leaders can also learn from you and from your country's experience. So once again, thank you so much, Madam Ambassador, for joining us here on the dtalks and for sharing your vision and ideas on education and literacy.
It was so my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you.